Dark Knight's metal. I remember when this first came out, I was curious about it because I loved the little promotions they used with like ideas of like death metal, heavy metal. I was like, yeah. And then I read this first issue and I hated it, and I sold it. I did. I absolutely hated metal when I first read it. But then I took a break from it. I stepped away. I was like, oh, forget this. And I read all the individual tie-ins like the Batman Who Laughs, the Dawnbreaker, Murder Machine, etc., so forth. And I went, okay. Because when you read this one, it doesn't explicit, especially if you go back and you read the casting and the forge, which I'll eventually go over. But it doesn't really allude to what's going on. All they're talking about is the metals that are casting to create this universe. And you're like, okay, I don't care. And again, this was me back in sort of my ignorant days. So when I read this, we'll go through it together and I'll explain what really killed me when I first read it and why you should enjoy it now. So again, Dark Knight's Metal. I think this was 2019? No, 2017. God, where have the years gone, guys? Jesus, it's going to be 2025. Anyway, this is the first part that I hated because a lot of people have said that one thing about Scott Snyder that they get a little tired of is how everything has to be big and epic and billions of years ago, and how they make Batman this mythological thing, which gets to be a bit much. And I try to separate, when I read stuff like this, I try to step away from what's happening in the main books and just look at this as like its own little thing, or else it does start to feel silly. That's why I didn't really enjoy, and feel free to make fun of me down in the comments, but I did not enjoy Snyder's run on Justice League with the Perpetua and the Fourth Wall. I don't care. It wasn't horrible, but it was just too much. Anyway. All right, 50,000 years ago. Lost to history. So we see these three drawings in the sand. Story about how in these lands during the Age of Stone there were three great tribes of man. Tribe of the wolf, of the bear, and the bird. And all were nomadic and shared a grand dream, a dream of discovery. And then we get this, what do you call it? Foreboding of a bat. But soon a fourth tribe arose, a dark tribe, unlike the others, one of twisted dreams turned inside out. And then we see this blood splatter across the tribes, and it goes, and with its terrible rise, so began the age of metal. And so we see all the Leaguers in this weird-looking armor. Now, refresh my memory, because it has been a long time since I read the casting and the forge, but, or was it in Justice League, that how all of a sudden the heroes are on War World with Mongol? I don't remember. But anyway, and it doesn't even tell you, like, if it is, it doesn't say previously in Justice League or Batman, blah, 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 blah. All we know is that Mongol is hosting these battles, and he goes, behold, your mighty Justice League, mighty. What death design should they face next? Something special, eh? Now, what kind of throws me, and still does to this day, is Mongol. He's not as flippant as this, as I remember. Mongol's always been, like, he would have some dark humor, but he would just be like, little man, who do you think you are to speak in my presence? Kind of like a Sinestro tone. So seeing him just very jolly, like all of a sudden, ha ha, Fulcum Abotimus, I love it. And now, my friends, it's time to go to war. This isn't the Mongol I remember. And this is what I mean by, yeah, I always know Mongol, like, instead of being like, oh, look at me, I'm the Grand Poobah. This right here would be more Mongol, not this cheering idiot here. He would be sitting there in his throne, fingers like folded like this on his chin, just going, let's see the Kryptonian die. Just like in the Alan Moore story, the Superman annual, when he's got Superman by the throat, he goes, happy birthday, Kryptonian. And Superman just says, die, or something like that, and hits him with his blasters. That's the style of DC writing that I'm used to. Not this, I love it, friends, it's time to go to war. It just feels so tonally off from the character. So I gotta set this aside, because essentially what happens is this armor is only giving the superheroes 50% of their powers. So Superman has enough to be semi-bulletproof, but not like fly. Stuff like that. Same with Diana. And this character here, the Toyman, he's kind of, again, another not slave, what am I thinking of? Captor of Mongol, and he's the one calling the shots, which I would never really know Mongol to call the shots. It's always from what I remember him being the one in control and knowing everything that happens. And that's important to keep in mind just for now. And now when I initially read this, I was like, okay, so this is going to be a Mongol event. Who gives a damn? And so the heroes are trying everything that they can, and Diana's calling these weird freaking formations, which I've never seen the Justice League do before. So that was odd. And it's Batman that figures out, of course, how to stop them, which continuity-wise, that does make sense. And we all know that Snyder and Capullo have a very soft spot for Batman in all the books that they have read. But what irks my Girk, the way that they decide to finally defeat Mongols, they get inside these mecha machines that are fighting them, and it brings a giant robot. And I'm like, ugh, do we really have to do a mecha battle suit? Ugh. Now, and what really killed me when I initially read this, and from a storytelling point of view, what irks my Girk more is we see this, okay, fine, we're going to go mecha. Fine. I'll think of some Gundam or Avengilon or something like that. And we see Cyborg go, booyah! And of course, Mongol would not run. That's just not who he is. Mongol is on the same level as Apocalypse and Darkseid. I would not really see Mongol run. Or if he did, it would be a more... what's the word I'm looking for? Elegant is the word I'm looking for. But anyway, something Toyman says is what inspires Batman. And I want to leave it at that so you guys can read it at your convenience. And now it just says, Barry says, wait, why do I have the foot? And Batman says, simple, Barry. So you can kick his... And then it says metal. Doesn't finish it. And you're thinking, okay, we're going to get some freaking Mongol stomping, kicking. Nope. They're returning home. How lackluster, man. That's like getting you all excited for something, and it's like, no, I'm just kidding. Ugh, I hate stuff like that. In any type of medium, TV, novel, I hate that. Unless it's like, let's say like there's a story where they do that, and then they'll cut back and show what happened later to kind of add suspense or whatever, but this does not happen. Mongols just sort of like the throwaway to kick off, to talk about metallurgy. Whoop-de-doo. Anyway, this is Scott Snyder's script. Greg Capullo pencils, Jonathan Gaplion inks, FCO Placencia doing the colors, Steve Wanda letters. Then there's everyone else that's worked on this book, and then, of course, the 7,000 variants. Now, as they're flying back home, here's where I kind of do appreciate that they at least kind of let you know where things are happening as they're returning to Earth. Because what is this? Superman's talking to Batman. He goes, Batman, what you said about the Braylons, you're right. They wouldn't lose track of Mongol unless something seismic was going on. Does this have anything to do with what you've been investigating? With why you came to the fortress? What happened in the cave? And it says, from Dark Days, the Forge, and the casting. So I appreciate that. But in Gotham, Alfred just says that a huge mountain has erected in the middle of Gotham City. And that's kind of how Metal kicks off. This logo should look familiar to older comic book readers. If you don't know, well, wait a minute. They go inside and they see people are frozen in sort of this like cryopod thing. And no one really knows what's going on. But we are introduced to the Blackhawks. Blackhawks have been around for a while, and I'm kind of glad that they really, revitalized it. In a sense, that's what I liked is when Rebirth came around and they sort of set Jeff Johns aside, they were really trying to find a way to reorganize all the continuity to sort of fix things that pissed people off with the New 52. So reintroducing the Blackhawks, I liked, especially with Kendra being the center of it, which is Hawkman's wife. And at this point, Carter Burke, oh my God. Talk about a Freudian slip. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry. He's really an okay guy. If you know, you know. Carter Hall. So we all know Carter Hall is Hawkman. And Kendra's basically saying that there's a full-scale assault imminent. Carter went to search for it and disappeared. And she set this team together, which we're going to talk about now. She brings them to Black Hawk Island and introduces them to the concept of nth metal. This fragment is one of the last pure pieces left in the universe. It's the only material capable of giving vast different powers to those who possess it. Eternal life, flight, mystical vision, it defies all rules of science and magic. And at certain times it seems to broadcast a strange kind of energy. And that's what it means. We go from action to reading. And I'm not going to lie. When I first read this, it felt like a chore. I like, I enjoy when they find a way to organically introduce exposition, but the latter half, it's talking. You would think metal number 1, action. And action doesn't really happen until issue 2. Just spoiler alert. I understand they got to set the stage. But I feel like they could have done that maybe 1 or 2 pages instead of half the freaking book. Again, they kind of go back to the original Blackhawks. Now, I can't remember, but please help me in my memory. Wasn't Black Canary at one point part of the Blackhawks? I cannot remember. In the old school DC, I may be wrong. I cannot remember who this cat is, but it shows, and I think this is supposed to be the Metalmen. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be the Doom Patrol or the Metalmen, but she goes adventurers who would challenge the unknown. So again, they reintroduce Red Tornado and the challengers of the unknown, which I appreciate because those are very old, obscure DC characters. I'm glad that they brought to light, especially reintroducing Red Tornado, because even though, again, I don't know a whole lot about him, but whenever he shows up, I enjoy him. So I'll always try to find more whenever I can on him. And we'll eventually go over the action figure. And then trying to smash all different things together, Kendra shows them this map. And this is the new, all the 52 alternate universes, or whatever you want to call it. But this is the map from Grant Morrison's Multiversity, which I've gone over a few of those, I believe. I have more to go over, but that was the map that Grant Morrison. Yeah, to make sure I said Morrison, not Jim Morrison. Grant Morrison made for Multiversity. And Barry's like, I've studied the multiverse for years, and that's all there is. There's nowhere else for this energy to come from. Is there? She goes, no, unless it came from here. And she flips the map and says, a dark multiverse. So again, more reading. Now, again, stasis. The challenges of the unknown, Red Tornado and Carter go into to the unknown to find out what's going on. And she said, we got a message saying, do not try to attempt to open this door. It's happened. Batman poking. And while all this is happening, we see that Red Tornado seems dormant. And then Kendra says, I found another word that came up over and over with mentions of Barbatos. And again, I felt like Barbatos, when I read this, was a little too on the nose. And it even gets a little worse. So I found another word that came up over and over with mentions of Barbatos, a traveling vessel, references to the wagon that would carry the beast here. Wagon, the root name of Wayne. Batman, the one who will let him in. Now, one thing I can't remember, and I'm not 100% sure if they reference again later in Metal, does this have to do with when Batman was sent into the past by the Omega Beams in Final Crisis? Yeah, Final Crisis. Because there's been so many freaking crises that I have a crisis trying to remember them. Because if you guys haven't read Batman R.I.P., Batman dies in Final Crisis. And that's when Dick took over being Batman and Damian was his Robin. But we come to find out that Batman was sent back in time, and he has to kind of go through different centuries of Earth and ends up back eventually. But he starts out way back in the Messianic era, I think, and you see him drawing a crude bat on a cave wall. So I don't know if that's supposed to be like a nod to that. Anyway, so she says, Wayne, Batman, the one who will let him in. Hang on, your theory is that a being as old as the universe has been targeting Batman for thousands of years from the dark multiverse? Please tell me this isn't what you've been investigating. And just like how Batman's like, silence. So everyone pulls guns on Batman. I'm sorry, but after Carter's mistake, I destroyed my wings and devoted my life to ending Nth Metal. It's my mission, and now, today, Challenger's Mountain appears on your home turf, and then Red Tornado just goes nuts. He goes, no, you open the door. And Batman bolts, because Batman knows that there's more going on. But even though I hate when everyone's like, oh, Batman can defeat anybody with prep time, blah, 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 I get so tired of that argument. Now, as you can see, that it can be true, but what I like about Metals, even though Scott Snyder can do that at times, as we go into the next issue, it shows that Batman doesn't always get everything figured out, and he is flawed. What is that? We'll eventually get into issue 2. But we see that we get a tease as we see Dr. Fate. What are these premonitions? what, I don't understand. Something's getting closer. And then, of course, Plastic Man again, he is reintroduced, which I appreciate, but it's just so weird that we have all this dark stuff going on in this book, and then all of a sudden we get this egg going squee like a fucking Pokemon. And that's where I got really frustrated when I first read this book. So when I first read it, I didn't read the casting or the Forge. And I was just like, oh, this is just an excuse to bring back Silver Age characters. Whoop-de-frickin' do. And it wasn't until, again, that I read the Evil Batman books, I was like, okay, something's going on, and it's kind of fun. And, of course, the Batman Who Laughs design was fucking awesome. So that's because I'm a Hellraiser fan. So Metal is one of those hit or misses. It took a while for me to warm up to Death Metal. If you go back and look at the reviews I did over Death Metal, I tore into those pretty good a couple years back, and I've been meaning to go back and give it a second chance now that I've read some of the tie-ins and can appreciate it a little more. But I wanted to go back into Metal, talk about why I hated it first, and then eventually came to really enjoy this first series. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen and you've never read Metal, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and either go grab the singles. It's in collected trade as well. So however you like to read your books. And if you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate it taking a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little metal bell. Next, subscribe. That was I continue to upload content. You guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with you and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.